I want to thank you for being with us this afternoon to learn how to launch what we think will be your best year yet. We're going to focus our time with you today in covering what's new with the Educators Rising curriculum, the premier product that we offer from Educators Rising. My name is John Hendren, and I'm joined this afternoon with our National Implementation Manager, Debbie Weaver Ballo. And together, we hope to answer any outstanding questions you may have, either about Educators Rising, the CTSO from PDK International, or specifically our updated curriculum for this upcoming school year. Before I hand things over to Debbie, I wanted to cover some background with you this afternoon about our Career and Technical Student Organization for those that are unfamiliar, and how we together are helping districts around the country. PDK International invested in the Future Educators Association that it acquired in 1994, and we rebranded it as Educators Rising back in 2015. And we just recently celebrated helping over 300,000 students to be prepared to become future educators. We're committed as a national organization to expose students to the virtues and best practices tied to teaching, while also exposing them to other career options in the education field. Now, you may ask, how do we do this? Well, with, you know, recent statistics reporting that the nation has up to 270,000 underqualified teachers, and that large districts can spend in excess of $25,000 per candidate in recruitment for teaching positions, we realize that schools and districts need help with Grow Your Own solutions, a model that helps you produce future teachers that know the communities you're in, and with students who are becoming inspired to make a difference. We do this through what we call our 5C models. You can see those up on the screen. And a little note about the statistics that you see on the page. The average number of students in CTE programs that continue with required further training after they graduate, the number of students that go into the field in those positions is usually around 10% for CTE programs. Now, we had the opportunity to do a small study in Ohio, and for as many students as we could track down, at least 12% had actually entered into the teaching profession. So we're proud of the fact that we're ahead of other CTE programs that require additional training after high school. And you can see some of the other statistics there that show you what students are feeling as they become involved in the program and as they think about a career in education after the program. Of course, what can help students really come to become those future teachers for your district is when your district offers them incentives to return to your district with the potential offer of a job. So, why are schools embracing the movement? Well, there's an issue that we describe as the teacher shortage. And the statistics on the screen point to this reality that unfortunately, not every school is in the position where they're having, it's fortunate that they're not all at this point, but we see it ebb and flow. It can pop up in certain areas, it can become an issue when there are lots of retirements in a particular district, but you can see the numbers there. Some of these are self-reported by teachers in the field from just this past year. So our job in supporting districts is to help them cultivate their future teachers with today's students. If we look at this using our own data, the PDK Association has the PDK poll, which has been doing polling for over 55 years. We used to be aligned with Gallup. It used to be called the PDK Gallup poll. But you can see that back last year when we did the poll, we have some parents who aren't encouraging their students as they once did. If we go back to the 1970s, there were a majority of parents who would be happy that their kids were going into the teaching field. But this is what we discover when we work with Kids and Educators Rising. Students are having experiences with teachers today that inspire them themselves to become teachers. When I ask many of our students, hey, why did you join? Why did you get involved? Why did you join the chapter at your school? Or why did you enter the CTE program that's tied to Educators Rising? They often tell me, I had a teacher that made a difference in my life and I want to pay that back. And as a former educator, that's certainly inspiring, and it's really cool that we're able to capture kids' interest like this and help get them into the field that they think they want to thrive in. So we're going to take a little road trip before Debbie comes on, and this just describes for you sort of the 10 steps we think of how you have what we would call a thriving grow your own program. And that first step, if you look at the little or the red car that came onto the scene there by number one, is to, establish a program. And we think the best way to do that is to have a CTE program that's a pre-education pathway in your district. And then it can be augmented with the exposure of having the CTSO experience where students are part of a chapter that can then go and compete and learn from other students and experts from across the country. So starting the chapter, you're going to implement the 5 C's that we mentioned. Third is some orientation and training, and taking advantage of all the opportunities that we have. And, I'm really lucky today to have Debbie on the call. She is our National Implementation Manager. And if you've onboarded with us, she is no doubt a familiar face to you because she leads our coaching calls, which we think are critical for our teacher leaders out in schools to be successful in the program. The next option would be to look into work-based learning and opportunities, potentially in your community to do things like um, internships and apprenticeships so that students can get paid while, for instance, they do their practicum and do that back in your district after they go to college. The fifth is to work towards getting industries recognized credentials. And those vary by state, but in some states, for instance, you can take an exam that would show you as a CTE completer. Level 6, talking to folks that are in your higher ed centers in your area. If your students can't come back right now to your district and do their student teaching, that's one of the things you might want to figure out with them. The other type of partnership to do is dual enrollment, which can help not only save students time towards getting their degree, but also save them a lot of money in the process. 7, we would encourage you to participate in our National Signing Day or a signing day ceremony at your school. These are for students who are committed to going to college and majoring in education. We want to celebrate them just the same way we celebrate our student athletes. The eighth stop is to enroll students in, a college or university program and to join an Educators Rising collegiate chapter. We have a national relationship with the Aspiring Educators Program, and that is in a lot of college campuses. That keeps kids engaged with the community that we bring when they join Educators Rising. Next is to think about expanding your program. Once you start the seed, you're going to have more students that come on board. And I apologize if you hear the ringing of my phone. It looks like it's spam time for me today. At least that's what my phone just told me. And then lastly, we would love it to see your Educators Rising students coming back and working alongside you in your district and get them involved in the Ed Rising program. They can talk about the efficacy of the program and why they became involved. So grow your own, very powerful for schools that, again, want to focus on making sure that they have the teachers that they need for the future. You can see on the map that we have affiliate agreements now in, I think, 36 states and 2 regions. This means that students get experiences with Educators Rising activities at the state level. Nationally, we have over 20,000 student members. And our most successful programs are building middle school programs that will feed into their high school programs. So we have a product called Teaching Fundamentals if you're interested in curricular support that is an excellent package to add at the middle school level, and then use our regular curriculum at the high school level if you don't already have a curriculum. And speaking of curriculum, we've been in the curriculum business now for several years. We've done several iterations with the product, making improvements to it. Alongside all of our efforts, we're basing the curriculum, the supports, the assessments on the Educators Rising standards. And these were put together with a number of national partners to ensure that students will get a high quality experience and that everything we built upon that foundation would benefit from that strength. If you go to our website, you can read more about that. But I will tell you that this is I believe, our third major iteration of the curriculum that was released this summer and is starting to be used this year by teacher leaders throughout the country. And I am not the expert. Debbie is the expert. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the baton over to our National Implementation Manager. And Debbie, take it away.
Thank you so much, John. Oh, that was a great uh, preview for those of you who are just getting familiar with what we do at EdRising. And I am so fortunate to get to work with the amazing teacher leaders across the country who are doing the pathway work and are using our curriculum either in their pathway coursework or in their chapter work. So there are different ways you can use the curriculum. It doesn't have to be if you're right now, you're like, gosh, we'd like to have a pathway. We don't yet have anything like that set up during the school day yet, but maybe you're working through like your chapters and you think it might be beneficial to have some pedagogical content ready to go. This is something that we do have available for you. So thank you again to John for that great background information. So I'm going to dive right in. I'm just gonna like go for it. Here we go. So let's take a look and see what 2025 brings for us. So the little bit of background that I want to tell you about that John hinted at is that this is not our first time doing a revision because we actually very proudly launched our first big package of content in 2017. It was amazing. It was very well received. Teachers loved it, and it was more reinforcement to us that this is needed. And teachers said, thank you so much for putting together something because I've been just pulling things, trying to put together the CTE program at my school, and I'm really not sure what to use. So this makes me feel like I'm now using things that are very credible. We know that the content that we put together was done in conjunction with a lot of amazing leaders in our industry, right? So the NEA, the National Education Association, the um, American Federation of Teachers, so like we have a lot of different collaboration with a lot of partners, and then also with national boards. So national boards is a huge partner with us as well. So when we're putting together all of this work, not just with the integrity of the folks that work on our team at the national office, but also just with our partners across the country, we're really proud of what we put together. So 2017 was that big launch, but we knew from the onset, we said we want to make sure that we're taking a look at this every few years and staying up to date and staying very fresh. So in 2021, we started doing our next big iteration, and in 2022, that launched. So when we did that, when we said, I think that instead of doing this every 4 to 5 years, we should just really do this every 3 years. So that's when we decided, all right, when 2022 to 2025, we're then going to launch a 2025 to 2028. So that keeps us on the cutting edge of the latest resources that are out there. We want to make sure also that we're always listening to our teacher leaders and incorporating those updates that they ask for over the years. So the one thing that has not changed over the last many iterations is this. Teachers love this stuff. They love this content that is ready to go. It's ready to use for them. What we like to say is that we create the lesson plan and then they just prep the lesson plan. So the things that are new for 2025 to 2028 is that we do have this like cleaner look, right? We always want to stay up to date with like keeping it current and modern looking. So we've given it a fresh look and feel for easier navigation, kind of a more dynamic learning experience. And you can see here on the screen that we have this page that lists some of the updates that we've done. We've also updated and expanded activities. I'm going to show you a few of those today. So we have some activities that have been reworked, expanded, making them more hands-on. That was some of the feedback that we got was this curriculum is amazing, but we want a few more hands-on activities. And everyone loves our real-world scenarios. We love to embed those. And they said, we love this. We want more of it. So we made sure to keep that in mind with this next iteration. And our new scope and sequence, we looked at how our teachers across the country were using our lessons and in what order. So, we had a framework that we were using before, and many of them said, they're like, oh, I love this framework, but actually, I really like a lot of the Unit 2 lessons to come in Unit 1. And so we took all of this different feedback that we've been collecting over the last 3 years, and we said, all right, we hear you. We're going to put it in this order. What has not changed is that teachers can still use all of our scope and sequence, though, in whatever scope and sequence they would like. It is still modular. That was an important piece that we did not want to change for this new launch, is that we didn't want to require that you have to follow our scope and sequence. It's really just a recommendation based on what we're seeing that aligns best across the country with different CTE frameworks or state standards for this type of curriculum. And we also wanted to make sure that we did provide some guidance on core lessons. And that is, we give you so many different lessons that many people were saying, it's so much that we need you to tell us which pieces are you must cover this. Please don't skip this lesson. Now, of course, it's still up to the school and the teacher who's rolling out the program. They can do things that are outside of the core lessons that we have, but we have pared it down so that when teachers are using this materials, there are 18 core lessons for sure. Well, I should say this. There are 9 core lessons per semester to get through this curriculum. So 18 for the year. And that way, for those folks who are doing just semester-based work, they know, okay, well, these are the ones that I would need to get through in just one semester. So that's another key part of it. So we have made a few updates as well by integrating some of our core competitions that we offer. So students who are looking to compete at national conference, for example, that it aligns to the work that we're doing with them during their classes, so that it's again this beautiful, it's just like it comes together in packages in such a beautiful way, because the teachers many times will use those competitions as assignments, projects, or even assessments in their class, because again, they're so beautifully aligned that they're like, oh, well, we can get through this lesson and then we can assign this competition. And then now look, that can really serve as an assessment. So that's, again, an important piece that we heard was, wouldn't it be great if some of the resources that are used on the chapter side could also be embedded and used in the work that we do on the curriculum rollout, if they're a CTE program. So all of these updates have been made available. And again, just sort of, streamlining how to navigate through our portal to get to the resources as easily as possible. So that's the next thing that I'm going to take you through. So here you can see on our left-hand toolbar, we have a section called Educators Rising Curriculum and Implementation. We were just looking at the Getting Started page, which, by the way, does also house, for those folks who have used our previous iteration of the curriculum, many people get very attached, right? They're like, don't take away my 2022 to 2025 curriculum. We're like, don't worry, it's still here. So we actually embedded this on our Getting Started page under an archive tab. So those who still have access to the curriculum can go to this archive and see the 2022 iteration. And just in case they're like, I'm in love with this lesson, I don't want to see it in a new iteration. We're like, it's okay, we get it. It's fabulous content. So I can totally understand that people don't want to get rid of it. I will say, most of the content was so brilliantly elevated during the 2022 iteration that when we did this next iteration, some of it was just like, we can't change that. That's just perfect the way it is. But what we did want to do is make sure to give it that 2022 edge of updated articles, videos, things like that, that we needed to make sure stayed, up to date with all of that. So that as you can see, if you're looking for the new curriculum, you're going to click on this 2025 to 2028. Obviously, you'd have to have a license for this. But when you go to this page, what I love about this new layout is that if you're a teacher using this content, you don't have to actually click down here and search. You can if you want. If you want to kind of get into, let me look at the scope and sequence and how the units are broken down, you can explore through this page. But for a teacher who's actively using this curriculum, they're just immediately going to go right to this black bar down here at the bottom. You notice it says year one lessons, year two lessons, clinical experiences, resources. And so most of our teachers are usually using the year one lesson. So I'm going to show you that. So when they click on that, it takes them right to the page that they need. So if you're using this program and you're like, excellent, I do have this. I needed a tour. Well, today's your day, folks, because I'm going to walk you through. On this year one lessons page, you'll notice that it says student guidebook resources. And if you did use the curriculum last year, you know that that was a huge, big deal. It was a gift that we gave everyone last year that we had these, the guidebooks. Let me scroll down a little bit to show you. When you're working through our lessons, you have this guided notes worksheet for each lesson, but we put together this souped up version of it. Like it's really fancy and cool. And so teachers fell in love with it last year. And so obviously when we did our revisions, all of that had to change as well. So we are currently in the process of updating that book for you. So it says the Units 1 through 3 guidebook coming soon, but I can tell you it is really coming soon. It's one of those processes, right, where like it can be in almost perfect shape, but we want to make sure before we actually hit like, okay, here it is, that it has been read over, checked for, different elements that we have to update. And so the biggest thing that ties this up, and so my apologies to those of you who are like, we're already using this, we were hoping to have this guidebook right now, is that we want to make sure that when we tell you to click on the little, you're clicking on the slides and you notice that there is something that references the guidebook, we want to make sure that it actually like aligns. So for now, everyone has today the guided notes worksheet to go along with every lesson. So you'll see that that is available immediately for every lesson. And what those guided notes worksheets look like is a graphic organizer. And it's a really great way to keep your students on pace as they're going through and using the resources and going through the lessons with you. But I will show you what the interactive guidebook looks like for those of you who are like, I've never seen any of this. So show me all the things. We'll take a look in just 1 second, but there's so many things that I have to show you that I have to think about what order do I want to go in. The first order that I want to go in is just to show you what does this updated scope and sequence look like. So we're going to click on this. It says download, and it will pull it up on the page here. This is again, a gift that we give to everyone who's using our curriculum is to say, here's a recommendation. This is how we really recommend that you roll out the scope and sequence of these resources, but also know you're the boss. You're not doing it wrong if you do it in a different order than what we recommend. Not at all. That's totally fine. You should absolutely align it to the framework and to the resources that you're using in your own class, and that works perfectly fine as well. But for many, many folks who use our curriculum, it's because they say, we don't know where to start. We're really not sure what to do. And so what we've done is we've compartmentalized them into like units. So this first unit is called Foundations of Teaching. You can see it says Q1 for quarter 1. We recommend that these lessons are done in quarter 1. And there are 4 of them. Planning your year with Educators Rising just like sets the tone of like, what is Ed Rising? How will the students engage in activities throughout the year? It lets the students do some cool scavenger hunts. They learn about the competitions, about the conferences, about their opportunities for getting involved in leadership opportunities, doing clinical experiences and service projects and whatnot. And most importantly, it helps them to get registered so that they can actually have access to all of these resources and be able to engage with our conferences and whatnot, because they have to be an actively registered student to be able to be qualified as a member. But then once they get through that lesson, now you can get into like things like growth mindset, building student confidence through high expectations, and reflection and metacognition. But you might notice that only this first one is in bold and it has a little asterisk, because this is what we would consider our core lessons, which I alluded to earlier when I said that we understand that we've given you maybe more than you could possibly ever use in a year. So if you did need to pare it down a bit, you would want to focus just on the bold lessons. But I can also tell you for, I've been working many years with teachers and they say, there's no way I'm not going to do growth mindset. So most teachers right now, they're doing planning your year with Ed Rising, doing the growth mindset lesson, and then moving on to unit two. As you move into unit two, notice this is still considered a quarter one, especially if you're just focusing on the core lessons. This would be your also quarter one. And now you're going to get into how does my school district work, or how does a district work? That's really cool because it goes into how there is, this federal level, state level, and local level of running a school. Like, how do we school? Like, why do we do it in this way? And including even budgeting. I was actually in a training recently where a principal told me, he said, I'm going to use this lesson with my faculty at a PD day because it's actually really informative to help anyone who's a part of a school district to understand the different levels and layers of how a school district works. So honestly, a lot of our admins look at this as a way to provide professional development, or for your first year teachers who are maybe themselves going through, like, hey, they're brand new to teaching. This is their first year at your school. What could they use as some PD? Our curriculum is amazing for that. So then with the kids, now remember, we have created this though for students in high school. So it is geared in that way. So professionalism is the next one that, again, if you ask students, we go to conference and we'll ask them, what's one of your favorite lessons that you've done? And they will say, I love the professionalism lesson. It really helped me to understand that there's so many different facets of being a teacher and how I have to think about my outside of school persona and my in-school persona, the code of ethics, all of the different, really rich conversations you can have with a student about what it means to juggle all of the different pieces of being a professional educator. You will not want to skip that one. It is amazing. I'm actually going to take you into this lesson in just a moment, and I'm going to quickly just review that. You can see here in Unit 2, we also get into like career pathing and what opportunities and roles, because many students who are going to join your pathway have no idea if they even really do want to be a teacher. But once they get in and they realize there's so much more to working with a school district than just being a classroom teacher, right? So this is a way for them to look at all of the different career paths, roles, and opportunities to when you're working in education. And then this real world experiences, say this 5 times fast, right? Real world experiences and cognitive development. This is going to be where you start to get into like the stages of development, Piaget stages, and talking about Kolb and talking about Wiggins and all of the different wonderful philosophers that have come our way and have helped us develop an understanding of how a student or how a human being thinks and learns, and talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and looking at Bloom's taxonomy. So this is a way to start developing those conversations with students and helping them to understand those levels. And you can see there's some other great resources here as well, but we would just focus on those 4. Then when you get into quarter 2 and 3, we're now looking at like, okay, now let's talk about setting up your classroom. Why are classrooms set up the way that they are? A lot of students never really think about it until they get into a program like this where they go, my goodness, there's actually a reason why, my teacher, my second block teacher, she has her classroom this way, but my third block teacher has his classroom this way. Oh, that makes perfect sense now. It's like, they have to change it sometimes for the lessons, and thinking very thoughtfully about how the way that we structure our classroom lends itself to the type of learning that can happen in those environments. So then obviously effective classroom management is super important. And we want to make sure that our students are prepared with all of this. You'll notice there's a real big reason why we put it in this order, because we know that a lot of your students are going to be released to start doing clinical experiences in their either later part of the semester or in the second semester. So we want to make sure that they understand the basics of classroom management before they do get into some student teaching. And then how to center student achievement, looking at student engagement 101. Then they're now into the basics of instruction. Curriculum. How's it designed? How's it built? Why do we roll it out the way we do? Let's talk about rolling it out. Backwards planning, selecting and designing our assessments, how we need to think about students who might have disabilities in our class and understanding how to meet their needs. Designing single lessons versus sequences of lessons, explaining and modeling content practices and strategies. And then in the final quarter, we're now looking at formative assessments, setting up managing small group work, and conflict resolution and management as our core lessons. Now, if you're looking at this and you're saying, there's a lot of things that you skipped, remember, there's so many more resources than possibly sometimes can get done in a full year. So we've marked these in bold that we say these are like the core lessons that you really don't want to skip. However, if it aligns better for you and your the way that you're rolling out to use a different order. These are all modular. You could even, maybe you're like, oh, collaborative planning, that's a must for us. We want to do that one. Then if you want to switch it out for another lesson, you could absolutely do that. Or find a way to squeeze it in, So that's the other great thing about the way that we roll out our curriculum is that we have a 1 day and a 3 day, 5 day lesson plan model. So you might have noticed when I was showing you on here, this first lesson is only a 1 day. It's meant to just kind of get things started. But we have certainly have had teachers have told us, you know what? I actually used that 1 day lesson that you started, to start the year. I used that the whole first week of school. I did a few activities from the different slides every single day of that first week of school. And that's another great way you can use this. In any way that you can take the fully developed lessons that we've already created and make them work for you, that is what our promise is to you, is that you are not going to be left hanging. You're going to have more resources than you could possibly use. But what's so beautiful too is that so that you're not overwhelmed, we did create it in a way that it's like, listen, just do the core. And if you just want to focus on the 1 day, that would be beautiful. You would be giving all of your students a great introduction into the pedagogy and to understanding our profession and exploring it further without going into the weeds. But if you want to go into some deeper activities and whatnot, we also offer a 3 day, 5 day. And again, some of our teachers will tell us, gosh, I could take that 3 day, 5 day lesson, and it was so rich with activities that I stretched it over a week or 2 weeks. And we love hearing that as well. So it's wonderful to know that instead of you being a teacher who's now running this program and feeling like, I don't know what to do and I don't really have any resources, you then say, I have so many wonderful resources that I get to breathe, and I can just take a look at this and say, you know what? I'm just right now going to start with a 1 day, and then maybe I'll do a few other activities from the 3 day, 5 day if I have time. And you can just relax in knowing that at least it has all been planned out for you. And then you just have to prepare which slides that you'd like to use. All right. So again, just kind of scrolling through to show you that all of these resources are available. I did mention to you that we do have these. Actually, let me click on Unit 2. I want to show you professionalism, because I promise you I'd actually take you in and let you look at it really quickly. And you can see here that we've got the PowerPoint for the 1 day or the 3 to 5 day and a guided notes worksheet. I'm just going to click on this one really quickly and show you. This is the professionalism. Let me get a little bit bigger for you. This is the professionalism guided notes that go along with the lesson. So the students have a piece that they can either type this in electronically. You can see that this is, they can actively engage with it electronically, or they can have it as a printout, right? It's up to you as a teacher. So if you are going to use this with your students, you would download it and either upload it to your Google Classroom or, Schoology or Canvas, whatever you use to share documents like this with your students. And then they can do it electronically, or you can go ahead and make the printouts yourself. But this is what our guided notes worksheets look like. They're very nice, very professional. But I did also promise you that I would show you the fancy version of them. This is what the fancy version of the professionalism guided notes book looks like. So again, they can still type and engage in it like this, but you can tell it's just a little more fancy and engaging, to look at. So as they're completing this, so they still have all their boxes to fill things out, but it's just a little fancier, and the kids love it. They love to have kind of the color in the pictures and all of those sort of things. Here's one of our scenarios that we get into in the professionalism lesson, and they love that it's got here's the little bubble over here of the scenario. Here's how I'm going to handle this scenario on this page. So we also do some cool things in our interactive, just to make it, again, a little bit more engaging for the students. So this is our mind map page. And then we do give them also what's called the key information page, which is something that's not typically provided in the guided notes worksheet. So this is a nice little takeaway of these are the different words that you should have learned or principles of professionalism that we covered. So just wanted to make sure that you can get a little bit of a taste for what this is going to look like. And again, in the next few weeks, this will all be rolling out with the brand new 2025 content as well. But we wanted to make sure that we just immediately for the new school year, at least got these resources out to you. And so then the last little part that I'll cover with you, just to show you and get you excited, let me show you what this professionalism lesson. So as the teacher who's using this, you would download the PowerPoint, and in each one of our PowerPoints, So again, this is the professionalism lesson. We give lesson objectives. We then also remind teachers that if there is a slide that has this little clipboard, they want to remind their students that when they see this icon, it means there is a guided notes worksheet activity to do with this slide. So this is a 3-day, 5-day. So you can see that on this slide, there's not a little clipboard, but this is more of a discussion slide. If you were just to pull up the slide and you did not have the notes and you're just looking at this, you're like, is that it? What am I doing here? But as you notice, we give you some notes for the teacher, what is, meant to happen with this activity, what it's supposed to do to kind of like get the discussion going and whatnot. And then some notes for the students, which some of our teachers like to say are sort of like their script. So the notes for the teacher that's like us whispering into your ear going, hey, this is what we were kind of thinking with this slide, and this is what you might want to keep in mind for this part of the lesson. The notes for students would be like what you're whispering or saying out loud to your students in your class. So this would be more of the part that you impart to the students. So, and then again, look at this beautiful, clean design for the new year. For those who have seen last year's, or I should say the last 3 years iteration, it was also beautiful, but this is it's a really crisp, clean, very well laid out activities on each slide. And again, for each one of these slides, it does come with the notes to talk about, like in this slide, we're talking about the different myths about professional identities, personal versus professional identities. And then it also gives some references to, that can link to PDFs that you can share with students. So again, really rich content that, again, if there's any sort of alignment that needs to happen to an activity, you can see up here, we've got this clipboard. I know then that there is a page in the guided notes that I'm going to make sure to either have printed for my kids or already uploaded to a page where they can fill it out electronically. So it's a beautiful layout. There are loads and loads of activities. Every single slide you see is going to be it can be as engaging or as informative as you want it to be, right? You can go through some of these slides rather quickly, and some you might spend an entire class period on. So this one in particular, for example, this is one of our scenarios. And like I told you, we really like to build scenarios into the learning process because we get the best feedback from students and teachers that this really got the discussion going in a deep way. This particular this one's about setting boundaries in terms of your professionalism and looking at the different viewpoints. So we call this the circle of viewpoint strategy. Some of you may have heard of this. It's not like a educator's rising strategy. This is just a great teaching pedagogy. And that's where you say, I want you to think about, should a teacher discuss their personal beliefs in class? Should a teacher accept gifts from students or parents? Should a teacher friend a parent on social media? All of these different questions. But now I want you to think about it from the perspective of a principal, from the perspective of a student. How do parents feel about this? How does the teacher themselves feel about it? And so looking at all of these different viewpoints is such a great way to expand your students' views of like thinking that there are a lot of different stakeholders in the work that we do, and we need to be mindful of all of the different stakeholders. So again, just this one slide could turn into an entire class period, depending on how much time you want to give to this. But we have actually built in multiple such activities. So that was just day one. And then you get into, for day two, another warm up. Here starts with a scenario. We start with a scenario. We get into some guiding questions about how we're going to now look at, for example, the code of ethics. We start getting into the code of ethics, teaching them about it. Sorry, I'm going a little bit fast because I'm mindful of time here. But as we get through, we're going to then, boom, we're back to a scenario. So we started with a scenario. We gave students some time to think about it, but we knew they didn't have all of the tools to be able to address the scenario until they understood the code of ethics. Now we're going to look at this scenario, start infusing some of all of that pedagogical knowledge that we've just been teaching them. And now we're going to attack this scenario with the students. This is one where a student is a social studies teacher and a swim coach. And sometimes she actually has to drive her students to practice. what problems could arise from the situation of letting students drive in your, ride in your car as a teacher, and you're moving them around the county in your own personal vehicle, right? So we know that that's common practice in some places, but what problems could arise from that, and how might you need to take measures to be proactive so that issues don't arise? So then we go again back into the responsibility to the school community, and to these different pieces of the code of ethics. And then we look at, again, another set of scenarios. This is three. We do this as a jigsaw activity. Again, all of this is described in the teacher notes. We describe how you're going to take these three distinct scenarios about teachers and social media, cautionary tale about risks, parent trashing a teacher on social media, and what should the teacher do in this situation? Should they speak up? And then a colleague social media situation where a teacher is upset that the principal plays favorites online. So we look at these three distinct scenarios. They are actually three distinct articles. So we give you all of this in your references in your teacher notes, so you already can either have those printed or uploaded to where the students can access them. And then again, they go into their jigsaws. They're able to then move back together and work through those and share out and do this engagement together. So without going any further, I can tell you, because this is obviously something I'm passionate about. This is what my day job is. I work with teachers day in and day out doing training on how do we roll this out? How do we do this in an engaging way? We have ongoing support that my team does. We're the implementation department. And so also as part of this rollout, we did change even our implementation support page for all of our teachers. This was part of our update. And you can see now how to get coaching from us. And again, these are things that we do. This is for free, actually. This is included in your contract. So we do orientations with new teachers coming on who want to learn about how to use these resources. We also have group coaching calls that happen once a month. We just had ours on Monday, and it was actually about how to take the lessons and turn them into highly engaging activities. And then we have all of these different members of my team. And so if you're in a particular state and you're wondering, oh, who could I connect with? Who could help me, and which state, you just look for your state and you click on, okay, I'm in New Mexico. I'm going to schedule with Megan, and everything is set there. So this is, again, brand new for 2025, is now we have these like links for you to immediately get to the support that you need as quickly as possible. And then just the last thing I'll say is that if you do come to coaching calls, we not only provide you with these, so like I was going through and teaching them about how to use the different slide notes and what does it all mean, and let's look at jigsaw activities, and we were diving deep into how to use all of these, but the teachers then will get a chance to have a copy of the recording, be able to look through these slides later and learn from it. We were doing the stand up, hand up, pair up, and all of these are things that are already embedded into the curriculum. But if you're unfamiliar with these strategies, we want to provide the coaching to help you to maneuver through it. So it's really awesome to get to say that every single day I get to come into work and do this amazing support work for our teacher leaders who are out there doing the really hard work of growing their own programs, growing their own teachers who are going to be their future colleagues, and doing so with a curriculum that is rich, is full of resources. It will make them breathe a sigh of relief that they don't have to build this all on their own. It's ready to go. And just imagine, I'm just scratching the surface of all of the things that we provide through this curriculum. Clinical experiences, resources, micro-credentials assessments, all sorts of goodies. So I feel like I've run out of time because there's just never enough time, John. I need so much more time. But I want to be mindful of giving you all a chance to ask questions. And if there are any questions that we can address today, I would love to do that. So John, did anything come up in the chat?
So if folks do have questions for either myself or Debbie, use the Q&A tool here in Zoom. You can park your questions. That way we can collect them. Debbie, I did want to ask you a few questions that we
Sure.
typically get. And, I was one of those teachers where when I started, they handed me a textbook and said, well, here's the provided textbook if you want to use it. And I'm like, okay, a textbook. It wasn't the most exciting way for me to think about learning for kids. And when we think about the way we've packaged these PowerPoint files, the first thing I think about is, well, wait a minute. So you had a slide up there about ethics. There may be something germane to a teacher in their district, could be a school board policy that's just being discussed that deals with teacher ethics. Is it, it looked like it would be pretty easy to like embed that type of content into the PowerPoint, or even my other second thought was, well, what if I didn't get through the entire lesson? You mentioned that one teacher told you, they spread the content in the first lesson the whole
That's
week.
right.
Is it easy enough for me to like pull slides or reorder them so I can suit the lesson for my needs?
Yes, thank you so much for asking that question because one of the bits of feedback that we get a lot that teachers say that they love is that when you get these resources, do you notice that each one of those little boxes, it said like 1 day PowerPoint, 3 day, it's a button to download. So what happens? They click that button, it immediately downloads. So now they have it, and it's on their computer, and at least while they're under contract, they can use it. They can take that PowerPoint, delete slides they don't want to use. If they're like, I just don't have time. I only have maybe. I've actually worked with. I was working with a teacher last week. She said, even though we meet for an hour, I only see the kids for the first 20 minutes, and then they have to be released to these little clinical experiences and things that I'm sending them to. I was like, okay, we're going to then need to take the 1 day PowerPoint and break it down, and you're only going to be able to use, let's just say, a few of those slides. And what we did with, in that particular case is we kind of looked and said, well, let's think about how do you maximize that 20 minutes that you have with the kids. And now let's look at these activities and which of these could be pieces that the students, you could upload these slides for them to review on their own, have them kind of like already, it's like flipping the classroom, right? So they're reviewing that, and then when you get them in the classroom for those 20 minutes the next day, you're doing one of the hands-on activities with them or the discussion prompts and those sort of things. And she's like, oh, brilliant, fantastic, thank you so much for helping me think through this. Other teachers are like, oh no, I have a 2 hour block every day. I get my kids for 2 hours. So I was like, fantastic, let's use a 3 day 5 day in your case, and you will have tons of resources. But then let's also think if there are pieces that, like you said, the district has said, we want you to use also this other textbook or this other resource. You can go ahead and build in time to do those other things, move slides around as needed, whatever you need. Actually, some of you who are listening right now might be like, oh yeah, in our district, we have dual enrollment credit with, let's just say, like Southeastern University. And Southeastern might say, you have to use this content and get them through this. No problem. So it's very easy to like decide, what is the stuff that is core for our district that we're mandated, like this is what we must do, and what are the pieces from Ed Rising that we can use to supplement in, because again, getting the kids into these rich discussions and having them do the competition activities and whatnot is what really starts to move the needle. I have a slide that I showed the other day that I was like, listen, we all have to go back and think of our early days of getting into education. And what did Harry Wong say? Those who are doing are the ones learning. And so that is oftentimes our North Star in this program is like, are the kids getting to teach? Are the kids getting to do activities that are going to build their pedagogical knowledge? If they're not, why even do the program, right? Like they need to be actually getting their hands dirty, so to speak. Like get them actively
Yeah.
engaging, mentally thinking through things, but also like actually serving. And students who do get into this program, they have hearts of service. They want to be doing. They're like, how can I help other kids learn how to read? How can I help them with fractions? Let me be a tutor. Let me be a helper. And they're just dying to get out there and like help with that. So that is what we love most, is to give them those opportunities.
Yeah, since you brought up our students, I thought I'd share a picture we snapped last year at our national conference. For those of you that don't know, our national office does turn on a national conference for students. That typically they come as the top winners from across the country to compete for national titles. But the quote up here is really what I wanted to focus on, and that's how powerful this Grow Your Own is. Lindsay Jensen, who was the state teacher of the year back in 2018 in Illinois, has been a champion of ours and knows that the program really works. They
That's
have the
right.
program in her district, and it's really powerful when your students come back. They're already familiar with your community. They reflect the demographics of your school. So, as you say, our students really love being a part of the program and feeling that they are part of a community of like-minded students. We have a
And
couple
as even that
questions.
quote says, where it says that even those who are in a hiring position, if you don't already have it on an application that there's a little box that says, were you ever in an Educators Rising program? Please do that. And like we are a movement that is not only is it catching fire, it has caught fire. Okay. Like this has been rolled out across the country for more than a decade now, so we have a lot of students who've been through this program. And if you can have them check that box if they've been through that, that speaks volumes about that candidate because we know that if they've been through the program, done these activities, attended conferences, learned through the curriculum, they're going to be a different level candidate, like hands down.
So we have a couple questions, and one I'm going to have to get back to. So, Michelle, for thank you for the question about Texas. We will get back to you about that to make sure that we have the correct answer for you. The other question we got, Debbie, was, do you feel like this curriculum is for first year and for veteran teachers? And I'm just want to make sure that the person asking the question understands that our program is primarily focused on high schoolers,
Mhm.
and our curriculum has been designed for that age level. Um, However, in addition to curriculum, we also have the five micro, or is it five or six micro credential, the
It's 5.
stack.
Yep.
And that's now being used in certain situations. We, for instance, have agreements now with Penn West and with Slippery Rock. Folks have never heard of Slippery Rock. It's a Pennsylvania-based college that puts out a lot of teachers. I grew up in Pittsburgh, so I had lots of Slippery Rock alumni as my teachers growing up.
Yeah.
But we have this agreement now that students who um, go through our curriculum and then end up taking the micro credentials can get up to 9 credits through one of these two universities. And so it's one of those examples where because we have collaborated, we have national standards that we've worked on, that these types of opportunities are opening up for students. And of course, if you can take the micro credentials, which are very inexpensive, in some cases, schools are helping students by paying for them, then they walk into a college experience with 9 credits under their belt, which is kind of nice. Uh, so that was one question. The last question that came up, are you guys in community colleges? I don't know if you could speak to that, Debbie, of any articulations we have with community colleges.
My understanding is that we have a lot of connections with community colleges. My understanding right now is that in most cases it's that they have worked out again articulation agreements with our schools in their district that have said if your student goes through this program, so what they do is they usually review our curriculum and whatnot, and they say, wow, this is college level. Like this is top quality. It's rolled out at the high school level, but this is college coursework in a lot of ways. So they look at it and they say, we could give X number of college credits to your students if they complete your course and they either get a certain grade or they've completed micro credentials or there's usually some sort of qualifying factor, right? But I will tell you, there's no consistency. I don't see that there's any like, okay, if you're going to work with a community college, it's going to be this, and this. Every different community college that I've heard of, they do something different. Sometimes it's because they have their own, again, resources that they want you to use. So they like that you have our resources, but they want to see those used as supplements because many times the community colleges have more of like the textbook version of learning how to be a teacher. But what they see as value of our program is that it's wow, you're presenting these scenarios, you're having them work through these activities, you're having them actually go out and serve and do clinical experiences and getting field work experience. That is something that they can't always provide or offer, but they love seeing it put together and they're like, hey, we're happy to give some college credits, but I will say that's done like, community by community.
Right. So dual enrollment is typically what that is called, and we have done we've done standards alignment for folks, and we understand that based on the needs in your community, that you've learned a little bit about how we work and you've learned about our really strong curricular product here. Community at educatorsrising.org is our primary email address to get those questions. If they pop up in your head after you disconnect with us today, we'll be more than happy to loop back with you. If you'd like us to, if you'd like to give us your email address so that you can get any news or updates that we send out, we promise we're not spammers. We don't send you too many emails. Of course, you can always unsubscribe if you don't want our content. But if you scan that QR code and give us your information, our team will reach out. And if you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to work with you. Um,
John, can I actually just interject real quickly? I know we only have 5 minutes, but I just want to say
yeah.
this. If you're already a curriculum user and you're on this call and you're like, oh my goodness, I have this product and I didn't, oh my goodness, I must have not realized I had an orientation that I could schedule or that I could go to some coaching calls. Please do go into your resources, and when you click on your curriculum, you'll notice there's a little button that says implementation support. Set up a call. Set up that orientation session. You will learn. You don't want to have you don't want to be sitting on a gold mine of resources and not realize all the goodies that you have, right? So that is what our team is so proud to be able to offer to you, is all of this included support, right? It's included in your contract. So please take advantage of it. We're chomping at the bit to help you and support you. And sometimes we sit down and, we help do crosswalks, all sorts of, things that we can do. But I will also say, if you're on this call and you have not purchased curriculum and you're like, wow, my interest has peaked, like John said, get in touch with our outreach team, because this is a product that can be used. It's beautifully developed to be used in so many different ways. So I think a frustration that I had sometimes, as an educator who would say, hey, you have to use this in this way, in this order, or else forget about it. This is the only way to do it with Fidelity. There are a number of ways to use this program with Fidelity. And I think that that's one of the beautiful parts about this curriculum, is that it's not like you're not pigeonholed into like, you must do this and then you must follow with that. This is like, can really be structured in a way that can be accommodating to, because some of you are like, we start our program in ninth grade. Others are like, oh, no, we only let students who are in 11th grade join our program. Will this work for me? The answer is yes to all of those things. The answer is always yes. Actually, the only way you can do this wrong is to just not do it, like not open it or not try, like there's so many right ways, and the right way is to just do the thing, get the kids working and learning, and they're hungry for it. They want to do this work.
Yeah, Debbie, I just want to reiterate, so make sure people heard this, that when you purchase curriculum through us, by the way, you don't need our curriculum to have an Educators Rising chapter, but we
Right.
obviously
Right.
we are fully invested in making sure that our curriculum is the best that it possibly can be for you. You've heard about the flexibility, but I imagine, or I think back to when I first started teaching, I mentioned that textbook they gave me.
Mhm.
What I didn't have, Debbie, was like somebody I could go contact about how to actually use that resource.
You
I,
didn't have a Debbie?
I didn't have a Debbie. So that's something that really cannot be underestimated, that when you get curriculum, you get the support that you and your team provide our teacher leaders, because ultimately we want to make a difference for the kids that you saw in the pictures that we put up on the screen. We want them to be awesome educators that stay in the profession. So I want to thank you for joining us today. If you signed up for us and came to the call today, we will be sending an email out with the recording. Feel free to respond to that. But again, our email, community@educatorsrising.org. It's been a pleasure, Debbie. I look
Thank you,
forward to
John.
doing one in the future with you.
Absolutely. I look forward to it as well.